Hi everybody. Today, I'd like to discuss with you the problem of anti-black racism in the Middle East. In the region today, there is a large and destructive problem with anti-black racism in the region, and it's a problem so deep that many Middle Easterners may not even know how deep it goes. This is a problem we ultimately have to work to eliminate. Today, I'd like to explain the causes of this problem and why it continues on, how it affects those involved, and what we as Middle Easterners can do to solve it once and for all.
First of all, I'd like to discuss the causes of discrimination against black people in the Middle East. Besides the slavery systems of the Turks, Persians, and Arabs, European imperialists also contributed to the idea of a racial hierarchy in the Middle East. Countries like Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon also deal with significant amounts of racism in general, according to the Arab Barometer's 2022 report on racial discrimination and anti-blackness in the Middle East and North Africa region. However, less than a quarter of Jordanians or Palestinians consider anti-black racism a significant problem in their societies. Egypt also provided similar results to Palestine and Jordan, but in Egypt, black Africans are depicted as servants in films and popular culture, promoting the idea that they're subservient to non-blacks. Egyptians may also even refuse to shake hands with darker-skinned people. There's also tremendous documented abuse of African immigrants in Lebanon, according to the Arab Barometer, despite the results previously stated, and so these results are obviously untrustworthy. Considering the historical Middle Eastern slave trades, racist attitudes could easily have transferred over as part of common culture into the present day, which I personally think is a reasonable explanation. I didn't uncover any official national policies regarding this problem, but indirect contribution to racism could be due to negligence as well. In the kafala system, for example, stealing travel documents from employees or even strict control over how much they can eat are commonplace. Despite this and protests being held against the system, the problem continues on. The problem can be helped, however. For example, routine police investigations of homes that employ domestic workers could reduce it significantly. Also, if there's a lack of official action to combat racism, governments can be held responsible for any such discrimination that occurs in their country. I'd like to discuss the effects of this problem. Again, while my research didn't reveal much in terms of official policies, governments can still be held responsible for this problem. Those who abuse domestic workers must be stopped by the authorities themselves. In addition, this problem will do nothing to help the reputations of the countries involved. As a Lebanese Canadian myself, the Middle East doesn't really have a very good reputation among my fellow citizens. Such ideas are at least partially due to ignorance, of course, but we can't afford to give credence to another stereotype that will be used to dehumanize us even further. A damaged reputation could also impact industries like tourism, for example, since less people would come to these countries. These countries could even face sanctions or other political or economic punishments. As for both the short and long-term impacts, some have been described already. However, there are also others that we should consider. First of all, if less domestic workers come to this region due to such abuse, well-intentioned and busy people could be negatively impacted. In addition, the reputation of the countries involved, as mentioned before, will be negatively affected by such perceptions, which could cause them to become more isolated geopolitically. They could also become much more dependent on each other. The last point I have regarding this is that we should work on this problem simply because we have an ethical obligation to help our fellow human beings in such circumstances. Lastly, I'd like to discuss the solutions to the problem. There isn't much in terms of official solutions or policies regarding this issue, as already mentioned. However, this fact can be regarded as simply negligence, as already mentioned, or as an active complicity in the problem itself. The various governments' idea here might be that they should just ignore the problem to avoid showing that the problem exists in their countries. In terms of solutions for the future, there are a few ideas I've come across during my research. Firstly, more victims of anti-black racism should come forward, since few come forward at all. Secondly, as I've already mentioned, the racism reports recommend action by governments themselves to solve the problem. Lastly, I'd like to mention that race isn't actually a scientifically supported concept, and therefore basing a hierarchy on race is truly ridiculous. I've personally reflected on possible solutions for this problem as well, and some different solutions that I have come up with, along with consulting with others, include that firstly, we must educate the next generations, starting in our own homes. In addition, promoting social backlash that prohibits public expression of racism, And lastly, speaking with people who engage in anti-black racism and convincing them that they're wrong simply through evidence and reasoning.
Overall, from this discussion and the research conducted, we can draw a few conclusions. Firstly, ignorance is the root cause of anti-black racial discrimination in the region. Secondly, it's destructive to the lives and countries it affects. And lastly, to solve this problem, we have to take action, including things such as educating others and encouraging victims of racial discrimination to get help. I hope I've successfully explained the cause of this problem and why it persists, how it affects everyone in society, and what we Middle Easterners can do to solve it. I hope that you can do whatever I've mentioned, that you can personally help with, so that we can have a brighter and happier society in the future. Thank you for your time.